Back in December 2022, Disney finally announced plans to make a sequel to the bedazzling 2007 movie Enchanted, starring Amy Adams, Patrick Dempsey, Idina Menzel, and James Marsden. When the first trailer for the film was released back in September, I was immediately intrigued by the ideas that it put forth, even in just the teaser amount we saw, specifically the idea of Giselle turning into the wicked stepmother and being the potential villain of the story. The idea of Giselle, who in the first movie was seen as nothing but a force for good, becoming the complete opposite of what we as the audience had come to know and love about her, was intriguing for me, especially in terms of wondering if the movie could successfully pull it off. When you have a character who is beloved and well loved as Giselle, coupled with the 15-year wait period in between movies, it was easy to be worried about how exactly this plot point would turn out. Now that I've seen the movie though, I definitely think it was a twist that was pulled off successfully and is an interesting new addition to the wicked stepmother lexicon that we know, and I wanted to delve more into that idea of what exactly the wicked stepmother is, how she's used in media, and how Disenchanted both used and turned our expectations against us in what we think of in terms of a wicked stepmother. The idea of the wicked stepmother as a fairy tale archetype is one that goes back centuries. A Euphrates quote from 438 BC actually reads, "Better a serpent than a stepmother." However, the archetype really took prominence in the 19th century with the Brothers Grimm collection of stories that included ones like Cinderella, Snow White, and Hansel and Gretel. Tropopedia further explains the idea of the wicked stepmother as someone who may simply oppress the heroine, keeping her in rags and slaving at household work. She may transform the children into animals, she may drive or send them off, she may act violently toward them and even kill them. The idea of the wicked stepmother is scary for a multitude of reasons. First off, she's the very antithesis of what a parental figure should be. Where biological parents, particularly birth mothers, are often portrayed as caring, kind, and loving, the stepmother is portrayed as cunning, vindictive, cruel, and abusive. All things of opposite of what a mother is expected to be in terms of society. Secondly, the wicked stepmother is considered an outsider to the family. Someone who is coming into the family with no blood relation is thought to have no biological attachment to caring for the children who suffer under her strict hand. I think this can also go back in terms of just thinking as a kid of when you are terrified of upsetting your parents. I think a lot of times we rely on the fact that they're our parents, they have to love us. With a stepmother or a step-parent, you don't have that kind of confirmation of, you know, they're related to me, thus they have to love me no matter what I do. So it adds another layer of fear to the whole thing. Of course, Disney, home of Enchanted, also had a major hand in shaping the wicked stepmother image we have today with their adaptations of Cinderella and Snow White. I particularly was terrified of the idea of a stepmother when I was little based on these because the portrayals were just never anything good. They were people who were out to get the children, and again, people who were supposed to be these maternal care figures that you could go to and seek comfort in were the complete opposite, and that was very scary for as a kid watching that and seeing that, you know, the villains weren't always the monsters and the dragons, but people who looked and acted like people that I knew. More modern adaptations of this idea of the wicked stepmother have even expanded upon the characters so that even the potential of becoming a stepmother brings in a wicked character, i.e. Meredith Blake from The Parent Trap, icon, or Vivian Berger from the film Au Pair. These women, who are often considerably younger than the men they're engaged to, are portrayed as cunning, cold, and not afraid to use their sensuality to get what they want. They also have no interest in becoming a step-parent to the children. It's often used as the threat, I think, that every kid, along with Quicksand, thought was actually going to be more of a threat than it was growing up, which is being sent to boarding school. The women had no interest in being mothers, at least in terms of being mothers to the stepchildren. Oftentimes it wasn't really shown how they would react to having kids of their own, but it just seemed like they had no interest in maternal figures whatsoever, and a lot of the more feminine leaning traits that we assign to mothers of caring, comfort, warmth, they were the complete opposite of that. Now for Disenchanted, the main storyline revolves around Giselle, Robert, Morgan, and new baby Sophia moving from the city that we know and love from the first movie to a suburban town called Monroeville. When they arrive, the family struggles to adjust to the new place. Giselle in particular struggles with the idea that her life isn't the happily ever after she's always been told comes at the end of a fairy tale. This disenchantment, see what I did there, coupled with a particularly harsh fight with Morgan, leads Giselle to wish her life was like that of a fairy tale. When she wakes the next day, she finds that the town has indeed become a fairy tale overnight, with the various characters we know becoming becoming fairy tale stereotypes. Morgan, the mistreated stepchild, Robert, the dashing knight, and Giselle slowly turning into the wicked stepmother. Even before the fairy tale curse befalls the town, we see this kind of mother-daughter conflict happening between Giselle and Morgan. In one scene, Giselle is excited to show Morgan the new bedroom she's designed for her, and Morgan is clearly moved by the detail and thought Giselle has put into it, telling her, "Thank you, Mom," at the end. This, however, is later juxtaposed when Morgan comes home late a few days later, upset about her new school and having to move somewhere she doesn't fit in, and snaps that Giselle isn't her real mother, but rather just her stepmother. Another conflict that's set up even earlier on between Giselle that she herself doesn't even seem to be aware of is when Nancy and Prince Edward come and visit Giselle and gift Sophia, baby Sophia, a wishing wand that can only be used by a true son or daughter of Andalasia. Giselle doesn't see it, but the audience sees how this affects Morgan, who seems hurt and dismayed that she's not considered the same type of level in terms of relating to Giselle that her sister is. And it doesn't appear to be the first time Morgan feels this way, which could further explain the discord we've been seeing since the start of the film between the once inseparable Giselle and Morgan. This conflict that we see kind of goes back to the idea of stepmothers favoring their own biological children in fairy tales over their stepchildren. Even though there's no evidence of this on Giselle's part, and she clearly loves Morgan as her own and just as much as she loves Sophia, this is obviously a fear of Morgan's, as she's oftentimes visibly uncomfortable anytime Andalasia, a world she used to love, is brought up, and doesn't want to hear stories about it anymore because obviously she feels like that's a part of Giselle that just reminds her of the part that she's not related to. When Giselle fully embraces the wicked stepmother archetype later on, we even see her address Sophia as her darling child, who she immediately orders the garden fairies to take care of. The contrast, of course, being that Morgan is not her real daughter and thus does not deserve the same thing Sophia does. It's also important to mention that unlike many children in fairy tales with stepmothers, Morgan's mother didn't die but instead left her at a young age. This would make sense why Morgan is more susceptible to potentially feeling abandoned by someone she now sees as her mother figure, and could explain why she feels the need to push Giselle away before Giselle has the potential to do so to her. When Giselle realizes she's falling under the curse of the wicked stepmother, it is explained to her that once the clock strikes midnight that day and she succumbs to the three known wicked stepmother traits, vanity, cruelty, and ambition, she will be stuck forever as the wicked stepmother of the story. So we see throughout the story her kind of fall into these tropes more and more. So with vanity, she takes Morgan shopping, and originally is just very excited to get Morgan a dress, but ends up buying the entire store because she likes how she looks. We also even get her afterwards when she starts to realize what's happening and say her hair is lower and her dress is shorter, which is how she realizes she's becoming the wicked stepmother, and is also a hint towards what I mentioned earlier about how some modern adaptations have really embraced the sensuality part, but that's always been around the idea of these stepmothers having to use their feminine wiles to kind of beguile and charm people. We also see her become cruel. She's initially excited to buy Morgan a dress for the ball, but ends up ripping it up off screen, and all we get the confirmation of it is her lifting the dress up in tatters and a pair of scissors falling from her, clearly insinuating that she ripped up Morgan's dress. And then finally, ambition. As the day goes on, her ambitions start to get more and more so than just preventing Morgan from going to the ball. Suddenly, she feels like she should be the wicked queen of the entire town, and embraces that fully as she becomes more and more of the wicked stepmother. Where the story takes a turn though, however, and where I think it really deserves a deep dive into the idea of the wicked stepmother, is in the end. When I was researching wicked stepmother and the history of it, it said online that oftentimes, and we know this from the ones we've seen, the stepmother does not get a happy ending, gets her comeuppance by the end, either dying or getting some kind of justice for what she has done. In Disenchanted, however, the wicked stepmother in Giselle, since we know that's not who she really is able to be brought back by the power of Morgan, her quote-unquote stepchild, for lack of a better word. Now, again, I know that I've been talking about them in terms of like stepmother, stepchild. I just mean that in terms of the fairy tale world, because obviously Morgan and Giselle are real mother and daughter. Like, that's kind of what the whole message is that it doesn't matter if you're blood related, it doesn't matter if you're really from somewhere or not, it's what you have inside you and those memories and that love that connects you. So of course we get to see Morgan reconnect with her memories, and we get to see a hint at the things we missed in between Enchanted and Disenchanted, and we see how it really bonds and brings out the magic in Morgan, who has really struggled with the idea that she is not magical, she's not from Andalasia, she can't use the wand that we saw earlier, she can't do anything to help break this curse, but Giselle knew all along that Morgan was absolutely the one that could break this curse, which leads to a really beautiful moment of them reuniting and Giselle giving Morgan the confidence and the realization that she has always been a true daughter of Andalasia because she is Giselle's daughter, and that it doesn't matter, again, where she's from, what's in her blood. The fact that Giselle has claimed her as her own is all that she needs necessary, and this culminates, of course, in her saving the day and finally calling her mom, which we've seen her use before, but you can see how touched Giselle is that this isn't going to be something that's used against her or for her based on where they are standing, but they've really reunited, and I think it's because Morgan has finally been able to reconcile this conflict she has inside herself of feeling like she is a lesser daughter to Giselle in terms of how Sophia is actually related to Giselle. And again, I do think it goes back to the idea of Morgan having these abandonment issues from her own mom and wanting to push someone away before they could get too attached to you. The idea of like redeeming the wicked stepmother is also interesting to me. Obviously it's Giselle, so like we knew deep down in her heart that she is actually good. But in terms of what we usually see with the wicked stepmother, she's not very three-dimensional. Like I said, we don't really know her motivations or anything like that. It just seems like she's mean for the sake of being mean. I would say the only other time I've seen someone kind of really try to dive more into the background of the wicked stepmother is actually when Idina Menzel played the wicked stepmother in, I hate to bring it up, but the Cinderella movie with Camila Cabello, because she kind of mentioned in that how like she wasn't encouraging Cinderella's dreams because her parents didn't encourage hers, and then like all of the she had left to do as a woman, especially in that time period, was marry rich. She did that and then he died, so it was like she had to start all over again. So she was kind of trying in a way to protect Cinderella from this hurt, but you saw where she had kind of lost that optimism in the world that Cinderella now had, and I think seeing someone so similar to her, she wanted to stomp it out, but that was the only similar one I could think of. This, however, is completely different. I feel like because it really is about the bond between, again, on paper, a stepchild and a wicked stepmother. They should not want to get along at all. They should not get along. And at the end of the day, the story, the fairy tale that Giselle has created should end with Morgan somehow besting the wicked stepmother in Giselle and saving the day, getting the prince and all that. But because it is Disenchanted and the Enchanted series, they're all about flipping the fairy tales on their head, and just like they flipped it with having Giselle, the princess, save Robert the prince at the end of Enchanted, this time they had the stepchild who was mistreated and abused, i.e. Morgan, save the wicked stepmother who mistreated her and was very ambitious and cruel and cunning and unkind to her, by connecting the memories that she and real Giselle actually had and realizing that there is magic in what they have, even if it isn't the magic that she grew up hearing about. And their reconciliation, I think, really shows the importance of those relationships, and I think was a nice way to look at it in terms of like, it is a mother-daughter relationship, and it doesn't matter if you are not blood related, if you are not from the same place. Like, the fact that they both had love for each other and these shared memories with each other that created so much power and so much love is what ultimately saved the day. And I just think it was a really interesting look into the updated idea of the wicked stepmother, because like I said, I feel like for so long it was such a kind of sexist trope, obviously. Like, we never really saw a wicked stepfather or anything like that. So it's nice to see a kind of updated version, I think, that paid homage to what the wicked stepmother is and the idea and the trope of it, while also rejecting that and showing that there still is love, and that love and the relationship between two people, no matter what it is and how strong it is, can be what saves the day. So I think it was just a really interesting look at that. Like I said, I was very intrigued from the start and seeing that that was kind of the road they were going to go down with Giselle, because I just think, again, someone who's so good and so opposite that, seeing her succumb to this was a very, very interesting story, and seeing how each trait kind of took on their own in this world and how she tried to fight it, but it was just kind of like, that's what the fairy tale is. But then at the end, by rejecting the fairy tale and saving the villain, essentially, and redeeming the villain, is what saved the day. So I really, really loved it, and I just think it's such an interesting conversation for who the wicked stepmother, what kind of purpose she serves in film and media today could be. Because again, I think this was a really great way of, again, especially since it's a Disney movie and Disney had such a hand in, you know, bringing the idea of the wicked stepmother into the modern century, I would think. I think it's just really interesting how they were able to show the kind of stereotype of what the wicked stepmother is, and then also how you can fight back against that. And I really, really enjoyed it. So I'm so interested to see what you thought of this whole journey that they brought on Giselle, and especially Morgan. I love that she had more of a role in this and was way more dynamic in this, and because I feel like a lot of times you do see in movies where it's like there's this cute little girl and like she wants dad to get with this cool girl, but then you don't actually see what happens after they get together and that girl starts to grow up and become a teenager and everything like that. And you certainly don't see how to deal with teenagers in Andalasian fairy tales a lot. So I think it was really intriguing, a very interesting story, and I'm so excited to hear your thoughts on it. So make sure to leave that in the comments down below. Bit of a different type of video, but I really wanted to kind of do a video essay on this because I've been wanting to do one for a while and I felt like this was the perfect topic for it. So I'm excited to see what you guys all thought. Also, make sure to give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it and subscribe down below to be told when I make all sorts of new videos, and I will see you guys next time. Bye!